Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello and welcome back everyone. We are learning the basics of building construction and today we are going to start a new module on doors and windows. In this lecture we are going to concentrate on doors and in the next one we will talk in detail about windows. So let's get started. Door is a solid openable barrier which is fixed to a frame in an opening and it is supported on the wall with the help of a hinge, a pivot or has sliding action that is used to open or close it. So primarily we use doors to allow physical access to a different room or from a room to the outside and vice versa. Windows on the other hand are openings which are formed in a wall or roof to provide visual access to outdoor spaces. So we do not use windows to move physically from one space to the other. We are basically having a visual access to the other room or to the outside through the windows. Now windows are fixed to a frame and mostly we are able to open them. Only in case of fixed windows we are not, but mostly we are able to open windows and this allows us to admit in daylight as well as natural ventilation to the spaces inside the building. So before we go about selecting a certain type of door, we actually have to first locate the door in the plan. So there are certain parameters we keep in mind when selecting the position for fixing the door in the wall. First of all, the minimum number of doors that have to be kept in a room should be carefully considered because every time we provide a door, there has to be a certain amount of space around it that is needed for circulation. So if we keep giving a very large number of doors in any room, we are actually reducing the amount of usable space in that room because all of this circulation area we are not going to be able to use for activities or for placing of furniture. It will be blocking the door. So we should be selecting the exact minimum number of doors that are needed in any space. Another factor is that the functional requirements of the room should be fulfilled. So that way we would prefer to locate the door in the corner of the room because that it creates least amount of disturbance in placing of furniture or doing the functions or activities in that space. Now when there are two doors in a room, we should preferably locate it on opposite walls facing each other in such a way that we can have cross ventilation or air circulation in this room. Let's learn some common technical terms associated with doors. It will help us understand the different parts of a door and also help us to differentiate between the various types of doors. So the first thing we will start with is called frame. We all know what this is, but by definition it's an assembly of horizontal and vertical members forming an enclosure for fixing the shutters. So that means it is the outside frame is the outside vertical or horizontal members within which the door will be fixed. So the frame is fixed in the wall, the door is fixed in the frame. The shutters are the openable part of the door or window and it is formed by an assembly of stiles, panels and rails. So what do we mean by the stile here? Stile is the vertical member in the shutter of a door or a window. So if we look at this diagram, this is the frame. After this comes the stile. So this vertical member right in the shutter within which the panels, these are the panels in between which are fixed, is called a stile. So the panel is the area of shutter which is enclosed between adjacent rails. So we are learning another term here called rails. Rails are right here horizontally. We see there are certain gaps between the panels. These are the rails. Now based on the position of the rail starting from the top of the door to the bottom, the rails will have different names based on their position. So far we know that the frame is the outer vertical and horizontal member. The shutters are the openable part of the door or window. The stile is the vertical member in the shutter of a door or window and panel is the area of the shutter which is enclosed between adjacent rails. Rails are the horizontal members in a shutter. It can be called a top rail, lock rail, bottom rail or cross rail. Based on the position, their names are different. So the first one, which is the top rail, is the topmost horizontal portion of the shutter. The lock rail is the middle horizontal member. This is the part where we provide the arrangement for locking of the door. The bottom rail is the lowest horizontal member of a shutter. We may also in some cases have intermediate or cross rails in between the top and the bottom rails, depending upon the number of panels that we have within our shutter. Mullion is the vertical member of a frame. This is used to divide a window or door opening vertically. So, between the above rail and the bottom rail, if we are connecting the entire frame area from top to bottom with the help of a vertical division, so that the shutter can come and rest on this, it is a clear division. This is the mullion. Similarly, if we use a horizontal member frame to frame to divide the window, that is called a transom. So, the vertical member dividing frame to frame is the mullion, the horizontal member is the transom. Now, holdfasts are Z-shaped mild steel flats which are used to fix or hold the frame in that opening that we have created in the wall. So, these are the holdfasts and these help us fix the door frame into the wall. It is very important for us to use the right number of holdfast and fix them in the right position, otherwise the stability of this door within the opening will be compromised. Jambs are vertical wall faces of an opening which supports the frame. So, if we are looking at the opening within which the frame is being fixed, those vertical wall faces are known as the jambs. The reveal is the external jamb of a door or window opening and it is at 90 degrees to the face of the wall. The rebate is a depression or recess which is made inside the door frame to receive the door shutter. So, when we are having the door shutters, they come and receive each other at a certain position. So, this cut that has been made to receive the door frame is basically known as the rebate. So, it will help us to receive the shutter within the door. So, we may have a certain cut within the frame or within the door shutter to correspond and meet at a certain point. So, those were the common terms which are associated with doors and also applicable to windows. Now, let us start understanding what are the types of doors that we can use in our buildings. Before we get to that, we will learn a little bit about the functions of a door. Now, the primary use, as already mentioned, is to allow physical access to different indoor and outdoor spaces. Additionally, a door also has several other functions. It provides security and prevention of unauthorized entry. We can put a lock on the door and secure access to a certain space. It gives us privacy. It has resistance to weather. You are creating an opening to the outside, so definitely we would like to ensure that the weather elements are stopped at that point and doesn't enter or create any problems in the internal spaces. Fire safety is also important. So, there is a certain way we have to select the type of door suitable for any building depending upon whether or not it is susceptible to a fire hazard. Not all materials can be used for the same. Resistance to heat and passage of sound is also a prime function of a door, and also it maintains air tightness and is useful in determining the aesthetics of the building as well. Depending upon the look that we want in our building, we can decide the type or look of door that we want to select. So, broadly we can classify doors into external or internal. As the name suggests, it is depending on the access, we are naming it external or internal, whether the door allows us access to the outside or it is an opening between two adjacent rooms. So, then in that case it will be an internal door. So, mostly external doors are kept more robust in design. They are thicker in width because this is the entry point into the building or the house. So, we want it to be strong enough to ensure privacy and security of the space. These may be made up of timber, steel, aluminium alloy. So, one thing we need to ensure is the external door should be strong enough to ensure safety. It should have locking arrangement that is suitable for the outside and it ensures security of the space. Now, internal doors are simpler in design. We do not need a very complicated design or even the same amount of width that we have in the external door. External doors are wider under most circumstances than internal doors. So, this simpler, thinner width doors can be used on the inside of the house. They are usually made up of aluminium alloy, PVC, plywood, timber or other composite materials. So, when determining the usage of a door, we have to see that it has a suitable finish and the construction can withstand natural elements if it is an external door. It should be a good fit to exclude wind and rain, because that will become an entry point for wind and rain during any adverse atmospheric conditions. There has to be proper locks and bolts for security. The design should be such that it can combat thermal and sound insulation properties. It doesn't get very weathered from the bottom, because there is going to be some amount of water exposure. So, we don't want it to be ruined from the bottom where it comes in contact with water. And the main function, of course, is to ensure that we have maintained security in privacy in the space. Depending upon whether or not we want some amount of light and ventilation, we can select certain types of doors which provide privacy or visual screening but allow for movement of air in some cases. So, there are many types of external doors and several types of designs that one can opt depending upon the aesthetic that they are going for in their building. We can have custom made designs, Tudor style, Georgian style doors. Mostly these are used for external doors or spaces. For internal spaces, we have much simpler designs, but of course one can always use custom designs in internal spaces as well for doors. For internal doors, we have to ensure that it maintains thermal comfort and privacy. There is a lock for adequate security, and the design or color that we are selecting or even the material that we are selecting should be something that goes well with the internal decor that we have gone for or the interior design of the space. Now, there are certain thumb rules that determine the height and width of doors. Depending upon whether they are external door, internal door, or which part of the house they give access to or what are the rooms they are leading to, we can decide what is the most appropriate size for our door. In general, the height of the door should not be less than 1.8 meter to 2.1 meter. This will allow easy movement for large objects or tall person. One has to keep in mind that this door will be the only point of entry through which furniture will be shifted in and out of the room. So, not only people, but it should be large enough to allow easy movement with furniture. The minimum door sizes for residential buildings, if it's an external door, should be 1 meter width minimum and 2.1 meter in height. For internal doors, we can have 0.9 meter width. For bathrooms, we can go for as low as 0.75. In some cases, that may also be used in case of a kitchen. Doors for garages, especially because it will have to allow access for cars, the width and height both will be increased slightly. So, 2.25 cross 2.25 or 2.24 would be more appropriate. Now, for public buildings, we need slightly bigger doors, especially in schools, hospitals, libraries. A lot of crowd will be moving, even larger pieces of furniture might have to be moved. In hospitals, we need to move stretchers comfortably, and there also might be a bigger flow of footfall. So, the minimum door should be 1.2 meters cross 2.1 meter. And the dimensions of the door may change, of course, based on the function and even the aesthetic requirements of a space. So, if we have a space that is double heighted, maybe we would want to go for a bigger door to give a more grand look to the interiors that we are going for. So, in that case, the aesthetics might also determine the look and the size of the door that we are selecting. Now, let's dive a little bit into understanding how door frames are made, how they are fixed. So, door frames are essentially an assembly of horizontal and vertical members. So, this is where the door shutter is going to be fixed. So, vertical members are known as the jambs or posts, and the horizontal members are called the head. There is a bit of an extension in the head on both sides. This is called the horn. This is which helps us to fix the door at the lintel. Now, door frames can be made of any of these materials. They could be timber, steel sections, aluminium sections, concrete, stone, etc. So, many types of materials can be opted for when selecting the door frame. So, these are examples of how inward opening door is fitted. This is an inward opening door. So, this will open towards the internal space. If we have an outward opening door, this is what the section would look like. In either case, at the head or jamb, there is going to be a slight rebate within which the shutter will be received, so that the shutter stops at that point. That is how the frame will have to be cut or designed. Depending upon the type of door we are dealing with, the size of the section may vary. If you are dealing with timber door frames, this is quite preferred and very commonly used in our residences. It gives a good aesthetic appearance and we can polish it accordingly, so it might go well with the interiors. We can select the color of paint or even go for simple wood polish. The thickness of the frame varies from 60 to 75 mm depending upon the size of the door opening and also the type of timber that is being used. Now, width of the door frame is kept to about 100 millimeter if the door has a shutter on one side only. But if we have both side shutters, that is, we have a framework which is receiving shutters on both the faces, in that case we would need a little bit wider door frame, about 125 to 140 mm will be needed to receive both shutters. Now, this may be a situation, for example, one side is a door of wire mesh to keep insects out and one side it is a completely opaque panelled door, which is the actual door controlling the access to the space. So, in that case we would need a door frame which is able to receive both shutters at the ends. Both shutters are going to be fixed at the two faces of the frame. So, it will have to be a little bit wider to accommodate both the frames. The frame is grooved on both the inner edges to receive plaster. We can see here in the figure, a slight recess is provided. This can be up to a depth of about 10 mm and it will help us fix seamlessly the plaster next to the door frame. The frame is rebated at its outer edge to receive the shutter as depicted here. The width of the rebating varies from 12.5 mm to 15 mm, while depth is kept equal to the thickness of the shutter. So, the rebate in this side can be about 12.5 to 15 mm and this side the rebate will have to be at least as much as the thickness of the shutter is. In cases where shutters are provided on both sides, rebating is also done on both sides of each jamb and head. So, how do we fix timber door frames? First of all portions of the frame that come in contact with the masonry are painted with coal tar mixed with anti-termite solution, because once the door frame is fixed, it is going to stay as long as the building stays. So, it is a long period of time. We want to provide it extra protection and to ensure its durability throughout the lifetime of the building in question. So, the holdfasts are attached to the frame, are embedded in the masonry with concrete around the holdfasts. Now, wooden pegs or plugs are then embedded in the masonry with their ends flushed with the face of the opening, and finally then the door frame is screwed to these pegs or plugs through galvanized iron screws. Some general precautions that we take up for timber doors and door frames is that all frame members must be checked from the inside surface to ensure that they form right angles at the joints. Otherwise, the door shutter will not properly fit into this frame. The members should be straight and they should not have any warp or bow in it. So, we do not want a slight curve in the door frames. It will make very difficult for the door shutter to operate smoothly. Now, three sides of the frame members should have a smooth finish, and the surface which is touching the wall may be smoothened with sandpaper if required. Also, we are going to paint it with coal tar and anti-termite solution before fixing it up. The frames shall also have dovetail joints. At least 3 holdfasts have to be provided on each side of the frame for a door. So, one is kept at the center and 2 are kept at the top and bottom, such that they are at a distance of 300 mm from the top or 300 mm from the bottom. So, that is 3 on each side. So, a total of 6 holdfasts are required for us to properly fix a door frame into the opening. Holdfasts and other parts that are inaccessible for maintenance will have to be protected against moisture and decay. So, suitable protective material has to be layered or coated onto the surface before usage. Now, let us get started with steel door frames. We just learnt about the timber ones. Let us talk about the steel door frames. A steel door frame may be made of single angle iron, double angle iron, T-sections or channel sections which are formed by pressing steel plates. So the first example here shows a single angle frame. So there we see that a single angle has been placed which has got a hinge for connection, and this receives the shutter. So definitely we'll have to select the angle frame in such a way that it is wide enough to receive the shutter frame shutter we are using. If we are going for double angle frame, then in that case this sort of an arrangement will be required. This is useful when we have two shutters at the two ends of the frame. We may also go for channel frames like so. In this case, first of all, the head of the frame and vertical jambs are welded together. Steel holdfast or lugs are welded to the frame. Chases are cut in the brick masonry for accommodating the holdfast or lugs. The holdfasts are accommodated in the chases and cement grouting is done to hold them in position. Then hinges of the shutters are welded to the frame. Now in case of stone masonry or RCC structures, wooden plugs are embedded in place of chases to place the jambs during the construction of the wall. Later on, the steel frame is mounted with the help of galvanized screws. Now let's try and see what are the various types of doors that we can use in our construction. Before we get to that, let's understand how we can classify doors. Doors can be classified on several criteria. We can classify them on the basis of arrangement of the different components within the door, the different members or components which are together forming the door. Based on that, we can differentiate between subtypes. We can also classify doors on the basis of method of construction. The basis of operation, that is how does the door actually work, how does it operate or move, that can also be one of the basis for the classification of doors. And finally, there are many types of metal doors that we can also use. So based on this type of material, we can further classify. So if we are determining what is the classification of doors based on arrangement of different components in the door, they can be predominantly classified as battened and ledged doors, battened, ledged and braced doors, battened, ledged and framed doors, and finally a combination of all of the above, that is battened, ledged, braced and framed doors. So this is how we can classify them on the basis of components that make up the door. Now if we want to classify on the basis of method of construction, then in that case the door may be of framed and panel type, glazed or sashed door, flushed door, louvered door and wire gauged doors. On the basis of operation, that is how do the doors move, we can call them revolving doors, sliding doors, swinging doors, collapsible steel doors and rolling steel shutter doors. If we have metal doors, they can be further classified into mild steel sheet doors, corrugated steel sheet doors, hollow metal doors and metal covered plywood doors. Let's first see the classification on the basis of arrangement of different components. So these were the types. We are going to look at each of them in detail. The first type is the battened and the ledged doors. This is the simplest type of door we can select. It's suitable for narrow openings. It is formed by vertical bands which are known as battens. So these vertical members that we see which are connected to each other, each of these are called battens. Now battens are tongued and grooved so that they can easily be fixed one after the other and together can form the door. Usually these battens are about 100 to 150 mm wide and 20 to 30 mm thick. The battens are fixed together by horizontal supports known as ledges. So these are the ledges that we see in dotted line here. So they are fixed at various levels. If they are at the top, they are called the top ledge, the middle ledge and finally at the bottom they are called the bottom ledge. Usually the ledges are similar in cross section to the battens, 100 to 200 millimeters wide and 25 to 30 mm thick. The door is hung to the frame using T hinges. These are normally made of iron. So if we see the cross section of a batten, this is how they are tongued or grooved to ensure that they fit next to each other. So the battens can be put next to each other and then the ledges at the top, intermediate level and the bottom level will help us keep these battens in position and together form the door that can be fixed to the frame with the help of the hinge. The second type is the battened, ledged and braced doors. Very similar to the previous one, just an improved version where in addition to having the battens and ledges, we are including another member which is an additional inclined or diagonal member called braces. So, this is the inclined member we are talking about. So, braces add more rigidity to the door structure, and that is why this door can be used for a slightly wider opening as compared to the previous example. The braces are also 100 to 150 mm wide and tend to have the same thickness as the ledges. Why we are doing this is because if you see from the side cross section, the braces are forming the first layer, the ledges are then being fixed at the top, intermediate and bottom level. Now, the braces and the ledges should be same in cross section so that it does not protrude out beyond the face of the door. It is also essential to slope the braces in an upward direction towards the opening side, as they work as struts and they take compression. So, they all will be aligned in the same direction. This is what the cross section will look like. This is where the ledge and the brace come in. The next type is the battened, ledged and framed doors. This is also an improved version of the simple battened and ledged door. In this case, the only difference is the framework for the shutter is provided in the form of two verticals called stiles. So, in addition to having the ledges and the battens like the previous examples, we are adding an additional vertical member at the sides of this shutter. This is called the stile. Stiles are generally 100 mm wide and 40 mm thick, and the total thickness of the stile should be such that it includes the thickness of the ledges as well as the thickness of the battens. So, if we see in the cross section, to the frame we fix the stile, this is forming the sides, and to this we have the batten and the ledges. So, that means the width of the stile should be inclusive of the width of the batten and ledge both together. The fourth type is the battened, ledged, braced and framed doors. So, this is a modification over the previous three door types. Here, this comes with the provision of additional braces provided diagonally between the ledges to increase its strength, durability and appearance. The door consists of battens, two vertical members, that is the stiles, three ledges and two braces. The battens are generally tongued, grooved and V-jointed, and braces are housed into the ledges at 40 mm from the stile. So, this is where we can see all the elements coming together. We have the batten which is tongued and grooved and fixed to the next batten. We have the brace coming in, the ledge we can see, and this is how the stile is receiving all of them, and that is in turn being fixed to the frame. So, this was the classification on the basis of different components that are used to make up the door. Now, let us try and differentiate between the types of doors based on the method of construction. So, here we can have framed and panel doors, glazed or sash doors, flush doors, louvered doors and wire gauged doors. So, the first one we are going to take a look at is framed and panel doors. So, this is a very widely used type of door in our buildings. They have a better strength and provide better appearance. The door consists of a frame with vertical members called stiles and horizontal members which are called rails. Now, these doors can have multiple number of panels. Mullions are also provided between panels as vertical subdivisions. Sometimes we may have vertical subdivisions between panels. We will take a look at the different number of panels that we can have in a door. So, we will understand how mullions vertically divide this space into different panels. Now, generally they are made up of timber. We can also use plywood, block board, AC sheets or glass to make panelled doors. So, if we try to name the different parts of panel door, so we have the top rail here. This is the freeze rail. The lock rail, this is where the locking arrangement will be provided in the door, and we will have another horizontal member at the bottom called the bottom rail. Now, in between we are going to have these panels. Panel doors may contain a single leaf for small openings, or it may contain two leaves if we are bridging a wider opening. Now, the salient features that we need to keep in mind is tiles are in single piece, they are continuous from top to bottom with a minimum width of 100 mm. Various rails are jointed to the tiles at both ends. The mullions may be provided between adjacent rails and they will be helping us differentiate into different panels. The bottom and the lock rails are made wider than the top and the freeze rail. If panels are made up of timber, the minimum width is kept to 150 mm and the minimum thickness is kept to 15 mm. So, here we can see a single panel door. This is a double panel door. We can have a 3 panel door as shown here. We can increase the number to 4 panels. This one has 5 and 6 panels. We can also have decorative elements within these panels for better aesthetic. The next type is called glazed or sash doors. This is provided where additional light or visibility is required in the interior side of the room. So, in some cases we would like some amount of daylight to enter the space. We wouldn't want to have a completely opaque door which will reduce the amount of light that is coming into the space. So, this is very commonly used in residential or public buildings like hospitals, schools, colleges, etc. They may be either fully glazed or partially glazed, partially panelled. The glass is received into rebates which are provided in the wooden sash bars and are secured with the help of putty or by wooden beads. So, these wooden beads are fixed to the frame and we ensure that the glass is fixed in its position in the rebate that has been created in the wooden sash bars. Partially glazed doors are sometimes provided with tiles that gradually diminish at the lock rail. We will take a look at what this looks like. This helps us to improve the elevation and to permit more area for glazed panels. Such types are known as diminishing styles or gun stock styles. So, this is the example we were talking about where we have a diminishing portion near the lock rail. We can go for a situation where we have a fully glazed single leaf door. We can have partially glazed, partially panelled doors as well. This we can go for even in case of double leaf door, that is the upper part, let us say we have glass, lower part we have panels. This is the diminishing style example. We can also have a situation in which we mix some amount of glass, some opaque panel and even add a louvered panel in between so that we can also ensure some amount of ventilation. So, this is how the glass is fixed into the rebate as one can see, and this bead which is provided from the outside helps us fix this glass in the position. We can also use putty for this fixing. The next type of door is called the flush door. This is used for a pleasing appearance. It has a very simple construction. It has got low cost but better strength and durability. So, what this essentially has is a solid or semi-solid skeleton or core covered on both sides with plywood, face veneers, etc. So, you are getting a flush or jointless surface. So, unlike panel doors, we are getting a flush or plain surface on this door, which is what gives this type its name, the flush door. Now, flush doors can be predominantly of two types. They can have a solid core or a laminated core flush door. We can also go for a hollow or cellular core flush door. So, the first type, which is the solid core flush door or laminated core flush door, consists of wooden frames made of stiles and top and bottom rails used for holding the core. The core may consist of core strips of timber which are glued together under a lot of pressure and faced on each side with plywood sheets. Block board, particle board or a combination of both faced by plywood, we can go for any of these options to finish off the top surface of the flush door. In the lamination core, the wooden strips are a maximum of 25 mm in width and the length of each strip is equal to the length of the laminated core. Alternatively, separate cross bands and face veneers can be glued to both faces. So, these are examples of laminated core flush door, solid core flush door. One can see how different battens are fixed together in case of the laminated core, and we can also go for a solid particle board core for the solid core door option. Definitely in both cases the type of section will vary. Here we can see the battens, here we can see the solid core with the face veneer or plywood at the outer surface. In case of the hollow core or cellular core flush door, let's first see the hollow core flush door. This consists of a frame which is made up of stiles, top rail, bottom rail, a minimum of 2 intermediate rails, each having a minimum width of 75 mm. Now the inner space of the frame is provided with equally spaced battens. Each of these have a minimum 25 mm width. So these battens together are going to form the core of this particular type of flush door. For the cellular core flush door, again everything else remains pretty much the same, but here the stiles, bottom rails are going to have a smaller width. The battens are then arranged so that the void space between the adjacent vertical and horizontal battens, we are forming a network of horizontal and vertical battens, and this area in between these frames will not be exceeding 25 square centimeter in area, and the total area of the voids cannot exceed 40% of the area of the shutter. So if we see what they look like, this type of network will be formed, and none of these gaps in between can exceed 25 centimeter square in area. And together if we calculate the entire openings that are left, that cannot be more than a significant amount of the door core. In case of the hollow core option, we have battens fixed at certain intervals, and that forms the core of the door. The next type of door is the louvered door. They may also be Venetian doors if we have the operation of opening these louvers or closing these louvers, we can move them. So these doors permit free ventilation through them, but they of course maintain the privacy at the same time, because you cannot see through these doors, but at least the openings will allow some amount of ventilation to come into the space. Now generally these are used for toilets and bathrooms. The doors may either be louvered for full height or they may be partially louvered, and the lower portion we can have panels. Now louvers may either be fixed in its position or they may be movable. So in case of movable option, we have a vertical piece of timber which is attached like so. We can see in the figure here. So that helps us to move the louvered angle along the length of the door. This may be made up of timber, glass or plywood. So depending upon the type of construction or aesthetic we are going for, we can select any of these materials to make the louvered door. The wire gauge doors, this type of doors are provided to check the entry of insects. Now wire mesh is provided in the panels, and therefore they permit free passage of air, but they do not allow insects to enter. Now commonly used for refreshment rooms, hotels, cupboards, which may contain food and eatables. So even in case of cabinets which we create in our kitchen, we can go for this option. Nonetheless, even in external doors, if we are living in a place which has got a lot of insects, it's possible for us to have maybe 2 shutters, one of which is this type of wire gauge. This is formed with the help of a wooden framework with vertical stiles and horizontal rails, and the panel openings are fitted with fine mesh galvanized wire gauge. So as we can see, these spaces inside will have the wire mesh. So that was the classification based on the type of construction that is done in the door. Now let's move on to the classification based on how the door operates. Based on the operation of the door, we can have revolving, sliding, swinging, collapsible and rolling steel doors. The first type, revolving doors, are normally provided in public buildings such as libraries, museums, banks, etc. And it's suitable for air conditioned areas because they automatically close or open. So it's running around in a circle and along a pivot. So it will close on its own. As a result, we can use it in lobbies of hotels or other centrally air conditioned spaces. Now this consists of a centrally placed mullion which connects to 4 radiating shutters. Now mullion is supported on ball bearings at the bottom and has a bush bearing at the top. Now this can also be partially or fully glazed. Now fully glazed option, if we do not have the requirement of hiding the lower portion or reducing visibility in the lower portion, we can go for a fully glazed revolving door. Based on the design or the space that we are opening up this door into, we can select the type of look that we want for the revolving door. The next type, which is the sliding door, this shutter slides with the help of runners or guide rails. So it doesn't open, it slides along a rail. Now this is very useful in situations where we do not have a space for opening the door. So if we in plan do not have the space to open, we might want the door to slide along the wall. In that case, we can go for this option. The sliding door may have 1, 2 or 3 sliding shutters depending upon the size of the opening and the space which is available on the sides for sliding. So say in this wall, how much area do I have on the sides so that I can keep the shutters there after opening it up. Based on that area, I can decide how much my shutter will be. So let's say I have a limited space here, but the opening is much larger. So in that case, I might break this up into 3 parts. So the 3 shutters will come and rest together, reducing the amount of area that is needed for me to keep the door at the side when it's in open condition. So that is how we can determine how many number of sliding shutters we will be needing in one particular opening. So there are multiple materials that we can use for this type of door. We can go for a wooden arrangement. Definitely in earlier stables also we used to use sliding doors made up of timber. We can also go for aluminium or other metals to make sliding doors. Swing doors, as the name suggests, are able to swing about the hinge. Now in this case, the leaf is attached to the door frame by means of a special double action spring hinge so that the shutter can move both inward or outward. So earlier examples of doors which we were looking at, the door was being received at a certain point, it is not moving in both directions. You can open the door only in one side, but the swing door can swing both ways, inwards or outwards. Now the door should have a peep glazing or a fully glazing portion on the top. Why we need to do this is to avoid accidents which are caused by the return of the door to the original position. Because it is swinging, it is possible for it to come back and forth from its position. There should be some amount of visibility left in the door to ensure that accidents are avoided. Especially in case of such doors where we are using it in, say, hotel kitchens or as divisions between 2 rooms where constant movement happens between the 2 rooms. In that case, we would want to give it some visibility. We might go for the glazed option, or sometimes we can also have the shutters till a certain height. So this portion and the portion above is left completely vacant and the shutter only is at a certain level just to provide a visual barrier to a certain extent, but we can clearly see whether or not someone is approaching from the other side. The collapsible steel doors are doors which are commonly used in godowns, workshops, sheds, public buildings, etc. But even for added security, we use it even for our residences. Now these are used for providing increased safety and protection to the property. These are very solid, very difficult to break, and also they can be collapsed in such a way that it takes up a very small area when in open condition. So that does not invade the openable area. Now the doors do not require hinges for opening or closing, or they don't even require an additional frame to hang them from. They come within the framework itself. Now these frames have channels within which they receive these members, as we can see here, and these members allow us to collapse this and save it in a very small area at the end of the opening. So it's kind of like a steel curtain. The door is fabricated with vertical double channels 20 x 10 x 2 mm. They are joined together with the hollows on the inside to create a vertical gap between them. The door has channel unit spaced at 100 to 120 mm apart and braced by flat iron diagonals. The shutters operate on 2 T-shaped iron rails. One is fixed to the floor and other is fixed at the top, at the lintel level. This allows us for easy movement of these metal members on the channel. Rolling steel shutters are also used in godowns, workshops and other public buildings. These are very commonly used even in shops. So shop fronts, we often see this in our day-to-day lives. So this type of door consists of a frame or a drum and a shutter of thin steel plates. Now these plates are about 1 to 1.25 mm thickness and they are interlocked together. So The frame is fixed in such a way that there are steel guides on the sides in which the shutter moves, and then of course it coils up in this drum on the top. The diameter of the drum varies from 200 to 300 mm. The horizontal shaft and springs are provided in the drums, due to which the shutter can be opened or closed with a very small push or pull. So it requires less effort. Now there are two types of ways in which we can open or close this. One is the push-pull type shutter, so you have to manually open these up or raise this, and the mechanical gear type shutters, in which we can mechanically move this up and down. The last classification type was the type on metal doors. So here we can have mild steel sheet doors, corrugated steel sheet doors, hollow metal ones, and metal covered plywood doors. So the first type, that is the mild steel sheet doors, are provided for garages, godowns and workshops. They have great strength and they consist of a door frame made up of angle or T sections. Normally it has two shutters made of frame or angle of iron with two verticals and at least 3 horizontal members. The mild steel plates of required thickness are welded to the shutter frames and then attached to the door frame by means of steel hinges. The corrugated steel sheet doors are similar to the previous example, except that corrugated sheets are being welded together to the shutter frame. In case of hollow metal doors, they have an appearance like wooden doors, but they have better strength. They are made up of hollow steel sections. The rails, stiles, etc. are strengthened by welding small T or I sections in the inside, and the doors are filled with insulating material for sound cancellation. The metal covered plywood doors are composite doors, which are made up of plywood and mild steel. They are reasonably fireproof. The plywood on itself would be inflammable, but because of this addition of metal, it becomes fireproof. The core of the door consists of 2 or 3 layers of tongued and grooved seasoned teak or yellow pine boards, which are 25 to 25 thickness and encased in a tight fitted metal sheets. So those were the various types of doors. Let's take a quick recap, because there are quite a few types of doors we studied to help us remember. We can classify doors on the basis of arrangement of different components in the door, method of construction, basis of operation, and we can also have classification for metal doors. Now before we fix the doors, we also need to know that the type of door frames that are available to us. So we can have timber frames, steel sections, aluminium sections, concrete and stone frames. We've seen how big the door frames should be, how they are fixed onto the wall with the help of holdfast. Now when we classify the doors on the basis of arrangement of the different components, they can either be batten and ledge doors. So battens are the vertical members, ledges are the horizontal ones. In case of the battened, ledged and braced door, we have the battens and ledges like before. We also have an inclined member or brace. In case of the battened, ledged and frame doors, we have battens, ledges, but this is fixed on a stile. And the last type, which is the batten, ledged, braced and framed, has all the components of the previous 3. So they have battens, ledges, braces as well as the stile. With respect to method of construction, we can have framed and panel doors. So panel doors can be 1, 2, 3 or up to 6 types number of panels. We can go for glazed or sash doors. So in this case we are using glass in the place of the panels, so there is more entry of light into the space. We can use flush doors which have a flush finish or a smooth finish on top. We can have louvered doors commonly used in bathrooms. They can allow ventilation of movement or air while ensuring privacy. And we can also have wire gauge doors to prevent the entry of insects but still allowing the passage of air. Now on the basis of operation, we can have revolving doors that revolve about a pivot and they have 4 shutters. We can have sliding doors that moves along their side. We can have swinging doors that move both ways. We can have collapsible steel doors and rolling shutters, which we commonly use in shops and godowns. Now metal doors can be mild steel sheet doors. In place of the flat steel sheets, we can use corrugated steel sheet doors as well. We can have hollow metal doors and the ones which are covered with metal and plywood combination. So this is a composite door type. So those were the various types of doors. We can further study them in detail from these references. So in this module, we are learning about doors and windows. We are done with doors, and in the next lecture, we are going to discuss the various types of windows. Thank you. See you soon.